Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 18th Committee of the Whole of the Beaumont City Council. First order of business is to read the Indigenous greetings, so give me 1 second to get that going here. We are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all the Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We're all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. Are there any modifications to the agenda from administration, please?
Thank you, Chair. Please note that agenda item 3A, Protective Services 2020 Annual Report, has been updated to include attachment 2, Beaumont Municipal Detachment Multi-Year Financial Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So noted for the amended agenda. Is there any member of Council Committee who wants to make any amendments to the agenda, please? No. Is there a committee member willing to move the agenda as amended, please? Mr. Hendricks.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Call for the motion. I'll call for the vote, please. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much for that. You could clear off the invitations. Thank you. Presentation and delegations. Item number 3. We have a presentation on Protective Services 2020 Annual Report. We'll be joined by Everett Cook, our Director of Protective Services, and Staff Sergeant Harpreet Dhaliwal of the RCMP. Is Harpreet on the line? I see Everett.
There we go. Mr. Chair, he should be. He's actually signed in, I believe, underneath the legislative coordinator. There he is. Okay,
great. So before we get started, on behalf of Mayor Stewart, City Council, and Administration, I want to welcome back Staff Sergeant Harpreet Dhaliwal to the RCMP here in Beaumont. He was with us previously. He went away for whatever reason. He came back to us again. So Harp, welcome back to Beaumont, and congratulations on your promotion to the Detachment Commander. We're very pleased to have you back in Beaumont. So with that, gentlemen, I'll have you begin your presentation, please. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Pleasure to be here with you this evening. I think, Mr. Chair, you just took off one page of my my notes here as you just introduced or welcomed Staff Sergeant Dhaliwal, so I can remove that now.
Sorry, Everett.
No, I joke. It's my pleasure to present to the committee tonight the 2020 Protective Services Annual Report. And sorry, I just want point of clarity. Will I be sharing my screen to scroll through the report, or will that be done through Ledge Services? Sorry, I should have clarified that before the meeting.
Thank you through the chair to Everett. Mr. Cook, I would suggest that you share your screen just because there's a little more nimbleness in doing that, but I'm welcome to share that for you if that would make things easier.
Thank you very much. I can share it from my end. That's not an issue. Thank you. And folks, on the screen, you should see the table of contents page for the 2020 Protective Services Annual Report. Excellent. Thank you very much. Again, it is my pleasure to present to you this evening this 2020 Protective Services Annual Report. You'll note that the report's in a different format this year than previous years, as we have combined emergency management, enforcement services, fire, and the RCMP into one document for your review. Also included to this report too are the 2 appendixes identified in Section 6, Municipal Enforcement Priorities, and our Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan. As we dive into the report, of course, we know that 2020 proved to be a challenging year for all service areas, departments of the City of Beaumont, including Protective Services. And as we go through the plan, you will note that that is reflected in many of our statistics and the operations of our departments. And I'll just put my skills to the test here to scroll my screen. And the night my mouse does not want to work. And I'm just going to, bear with me, my apologies. I'm going to, dealing with 3 screens, so I apologize for that. I'm just going to start that again, screen and share. There we go. Again, you should be back to the table of contents that I'm now just scrolling through, straight through to emergency management. A high-level review of the report, folks, starting with emergency management. As you may recall, in 2020, in early 2020, we passed our new emergency management bylaw that was under the direction of the province of Alberta, and a new act and regulation that was put forward. Of course, at the time, the intent of our new bylaw was to create both an emergency management advisory committee, which is comprised of council and our director of emergency management and deputy director, as well as an emergency management agency. Of course, COVID delayed much of our inaugural meetings, but I'm happy to announce that just last month we had our first meeting of our agency. In addition to drafting the newly focused bylaw, much attention was put on training of our staff, including elected officials, of course. And I'm very pleased to note that in 2020, we trained no less than 68 staff members, new staff members and existing staff members with incident command and emergency management skills. Timing was, couldn't have been any better, of course, as we moved into the pandemic. And of course, and I'm very pleased to say that as of today, we've actually trained in excess of 85 staff members. Of course, our new bylaw and our training program were very timely again as we moved into the pandemic. As on March 16th, we activated our emergency management, our emergency coordination center. The Emergency Coordination Center was activated in response to the global pandemic, COVID-19, and it initially was launched here in the fire hall. We moved to the CCBCC as we were working to protect our essential service, the fire service. And then, of course, right near the end, we moved back. 137 days that activation remained, or our ECC remained open, and we were activated. And for a municipality that hadn't activated in a number of years, it was quite a feat and very, very well done. Touching on highlights of our municipal enforcement service areas, again, as with other service areas, we were highly impacted by COVID-19, and changes to our program were put in place to help address our city's response to the pandemic. First and foremost, we extended our coverage by providing a visible presence in the community. We extended our hours out later into the evening, so started later in the morning, worked later into the evening, just to help maintain that presence. And in addition, we moved to 7 days a week, and this was the same number of staff that we had originally had on board at the time. We did bring on a seasonal bylaw officer for a couple of the summer months just to help with vacancies, of course, with holidays or days off and such, and again, maintaining that presence. And of course, our officers were granted authority to assist in enforcing the public health measures put in place by the province of Alberta. It was on again, or it was put in place, taken off, on again, and such. However, our officers did very, very well in that enforcement. And as you see on page number 6 of the report, which is page number 11 of the document, I provided some statistics with response to COVID-19. In total, municipal enforcement only, does not include the RCMP, responded to a total of 55 complaints, 22 of which were in relation to our face covering bylaw, which was in force at the time, and the provincial health order, or provincial health, the authority under the act. We responded to a number of complaints as well, a total of 33. It's important to note that our responses under any provincial health order were initiated by Alberta Health Services, either by reaching out to the RCMP or to municipal enforcement directly. Municipal enforcement issued 0 tickets in response to COVID-19, as we did take an education enforcement through education approach, and 35 warnings were issued to residents or to the events throughout town. Our COVID-19 response, and of course the pandemic, severely impacted our school resource officer program. With schools being shut down in early 2020, Christine Hepburn, our school resource officer, who's also community peace officer level 1, had the opportunity to work within the ECC, participating in a task force that was working towards creating online programs for our youth to keep kids busy during a pandemic. Put together some programs. Not all were implemented, but they were on the shelf, so to speak, and ready to go should we have needed them. In addition, Christine helped out with enforcement, or a proactive approach in the community, maintaining, again, that visible presence in our community. And by the end of 2020, I'm very happy to report to council, or to the committee, that 557 youth were engaged, even though we were in the middle of a pandemic, by our school resource officer. Important to note that the programs that were delivered by our school resource officer include online safety, drug awareness, bullying, healthy relationships, criminal code awareness, and of course, Halloween safety and other safety related events as it relates to holidays. As mentioned, Beaumont Municipal Enforcement spent much time in the community maintaining that visible presence. As you can see by the photo on the right-hand side, our ME officers took to our parks, our skate park, our various playgrounds and such, as well as many of our trail systems, both on foot and on bike. It had been some time since we'd been able to get out on bikes. That was just due to equipment and such, but the initiative was put in place to make this happen for this year as another way to, again, maintain that presence in our community. And in addition to that as well, we moved to an online 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week dispatch line or dedicated dispatch line for municipal enforcement. You may recall in the past that we had put in place an after-hours answering service to enhance our daytime services of answering the phone through the detachment. We've moved completely away from that now, and again, moved to that 24-hour dispatching service, which provides dedicated trained dispatchers on the other end of the phone for our residents when they call through, that can go through and triage a call, direct calls to the RCMP if so warranted, of course, record all information and assign any files being created to the next on-duty officer. We're finding great results in this. In addition, we've also improved our officer safety by making this move. It's very simply dispatches on the other end of the radio. So if officer is in a situation where they need assistance, it's a simple key of their lapel microphone and they actually have somebody on the other end of the line. Just looking at the statistics as provided on page 13 of the overall council package or page 8 of the report, you'll see that the total calls for service or files generated for municipal enforcement is 987 for 2020. A good number for a year where obviously we were in lockdown or everybody was at home for a great period of time. And one other area to note, not wanting to go through every statistic line by line, but one other area to note for 2020 underneath of our top 5 moving violations, which is our table on the bottom left, our speeding count was down to a total of 52 violation tickets issued from 218 in 2019. Again, this has contributed to less vehicles on the road in the spring, and our officers focus on maintaining that visible presence in the community and supporting our COVID-19 response. Looking to our fire service for 2020, fire service, much like municipal enforcement, had to make a lot of operational changes to address the needs of the community. Number one, the fire hall was closed to non-essential staff and public visitors. Unfortunately, that took a heavy toll on many of the classes that we have coming through for fire hall visits, tours, and educational programs that are put on by our fire prevention officer, Michael Wiskinek. It's important to note that the closing of our fire hall did not include the closing of the hall to non-essential staff that were not operating in the ECC. So for example, if folks were responding to the Emergency Coordination Center here in the fire hall, obviously they were still able to gain access. Our full-time coverage was extended from 5 days a week to 7. Again, that's in to support, number one, protecting our service, but providing those services to our residents. So an enhancement of services for a time being. And of course, COVID-19 protocols were put in place, not only in the station for what we did around the station, but also to follow Alberta Health Services standards and guidelines with regards to medical responses and of course, any responses to any emergency situation for that matter. We also created a staffing action plan to identify possible steps that we could take should the fire hall be impacted by COVID-19. In other words, if some of our members were put into isolation for a period of 14 days and such. As mentioned, our fire prevention program really took a hit, if you will, in 2020 as our doors were closed. However, we did take unique steps as going online. And we went online with supporting the fire prevention message in 2020 of fire and burn safety in the kitchen. And perhaps some of you would have seen the videos we have on our Facebook page and online that promote those safety messages. And that was in conjunction and excellent support, of course, with our communications department to help keep that message going. Further to that as well, in other videos that our members created, we updated many forms and we started putting documents out for our residents and contractors, of course, and builders in town, which included updated fire safety plans, or how-to documents, if you will, for creating fire safety plans for construction, renovations, demolition sites, as well as home escape planning as an example. In total, 4 online educational videos were created. And as you can see on the statistics on the right-hand side, we were able to conduct 14 inspections, 20 occupancy loads, and we managed to get out and conduct 49 fire pit inspections for the year, for the 2020 year. And just in closing on the fire service, of course, members were able to continue to support local nonprofit charity groups, much like the Beaumont Christmas Elves. And for the first time, members of the Beaumont Fire Service released their first annual Fire Services Cookbook, and were able to raise $9,000 for the Edmonton Firefighters Burn Society. Of course, that money goes into the Burn Society and is there and available to anyone in the region that needs those services. The photo presented here is a check presentation by our committee that led that initiative. And in closing, as we moved into 2020, the members of the fire service were working collectively, all members, on recreating our, on recreating our core values for our service. Pride, integrity, and commitment were selected by the staff of the Beaumont Fire Service, and we were able to conclude that prior to our shutdown or the COVID-19 pandemic taking hold of us on March 16th. Looking at a few statistics, maybe of interest to the committee, we've seen a 4.2% increase in calls, or in total number of calls between 2019 and 2020. And as you will see on page number 13 of the report, or 18 in your council package, we responded to 19 reports of structure fire, or of fires, 10 of which resulted in investigations being completed, 3 of which were suspected arson. It's important to note, as the blue box on the screen indicates, and again, it may be of interest to the committee, that every dollar loss fire that occurs within the municipality of Beaumont is required to be reported to the Office of the Fire Commissioner within 72 hours and investigated. And just finally, with the fire service, I wanted to focus on the total number of hours trained or spent training by our members. As we look at 2019, that's on the bottom right-hand side, we had just under 5,000 hours spent training in total for that year. And of course, in 2020, that dropped down to 1,906 hours. I'm very pleased to say, though, that the year to date for 2021, we are now at 1,535 hours training time for our volunteers and our full-time staff. So we're right on track to be where we were prior to the pandemic. And with that, I do just want to say 1 or 2 words before or as I introduce Staff Sergeant Dollywall as we move into the RCMP report. And again, just to build off your comments, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add that Staff Sergeant Dollywall actually came to us from the Breton Thorsby Detachment. I believe you mentioned that, but he also brings with him 23 years of policing service between the provinces of British Columbia and Alberta, which is very evident in his in the skill set and the commitment that he brings to Beaumont. I also would like to add that Harp was selected from a group of candidates as his community policing ethics, along with his prior knowledge of our community, made him the obvious choice for the city of Beaumont. So Staff Sergeant Dollywall, if you're able to turn on your monitor, and then I'll come back with the appendixes once you're completed.
Thank you very much, Everett, Mr. Chair and the committee. Thank you very much for having me and for the nice words. It is very nice to be back in Beaumont. Looking really forward to it, especially when I heard that Staff Sergeant Egan was leaving. Gave me an opportunity to come back and serve the community here again. I had a really good time the 14 months that I was here as well. Everett, I just on May 5th got 24 years. So we'll have to update my bio there. But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to share my screen here, and then we'll follow along, please, with my report here. I'm still learning how to do this, so. So Everett, I think you have to turn your share off so I can, oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So just, this is a report for 2020 and 2021. Just the overall crime stats at a glance here on page 3. Persons crime, we saw a total number of persons crimes by 25%, while the change of increase over the last year was 27. I will go a little bit later through the table that's there, and it'll make a little bit more sense over the years on how the changes have happened. And we'll talk about some of the initiatives that the RCMP has put forward as well. Property crime has been an issue for Alberta overall for the last few years as well. And it did increase by 6%, but overall it has decreased by 7% within the last year. And that's also by the initiatives, combined initiatives with working with the community police officers and the RCMP together. Other criminal code saw a decrease overall by 27% and a decrease in 4% just over the last year. I did want to talk about the crime severity index, and I know there's been a lot of talk through the media as well as Beaumont being one of the safest places to live, which it is, and that also goes with our citizens here doing their due diligence. But the crime severity index tracks changes in the severity of police reported crime by accounting for both the amount of crime reported by police in its given jurisdiction and the relative seriousness of these crimes. So that one number, because of our population, if we were to have a homicide here, it might, go up considerably. So that's what we just need to take into account as well. And the baseline for the whole CSI is 100. And right now for 2019, ours was down to 36.6. Overall, in the last 5-6 years, we have never hit over 50 for that number. Our population is increasing as well. This is our chart on this page here. If we look at persons crime, there's a few ones that I wanted to bring up to the committee. One second here. If we are looking at the persons crime, criminal harassment, due to social media, there's been a lot of calls regards to that with text messaging where people aren't stopping doing that. Once we do have even conditions put on individuals, they believe that text messaging isn't in direct contact or direct contact. And so we had a significant increase in that. Most of it's not even, we can say domestic related, it's every walks of life. If there's landlord tenancy issues or other issues as well, that's where that number comes from. And that's quite a bit of the increase there in persons crime for the 25%, because that was a big jump just in the criminal harassment issue. The next one in property crime, the big one is where it says theft under 5,000. We went from 187 to 131, and that's where we have to give credit to our community partners and the citizens here working together to keep their stuff all locked up as well. Possession of stolen goods, those are the charges that are laid actually by the RCMP and where we've actually located the individuals. Because of CCTV and all, we've been able to identify more people, especially when the crime is being committed in the middle of the night, where you don't know who was in your backyard or anything like that, and then they've left from there. Very surprising to see mischief to property up considerably here to 159 from 138. Right now, when our members are patrolling around the city, we are seeing that there's people walking around almost 24/7. And some of the hardships that the individuals are facing as well, not being able to live where they are. A lot of people are, because of COVID, also in the house together, where people are not used to being that way as well. Not to say that everybody that's walking out is committing the crime, but there is still activity out there. On the drug enforcement side, drug trafficking, there's been an increase in charges as well, from the 8 to 11 to the 20. One big jump in other or total federal there under provincial statutes under Mental Health Act is that the increase in the calls for 108 last year to 136 in 2020 as well. And at the bottom portion of this page, I will talk about what a Form 10 is, and just to explain a little bit more onto that as well. And our members attending some noise bylaws, 162 to 247, that was quite a bit of an increase. Just in where it says common police activities, a couple of things that I did want to talk about here as well is that false alarms are down, which is really good. That means that, through education, more people are aware of those once they're aware of what the alarm bylaw is, which increases more time for the police to do proactive policing as well, rather than attending false calls. False abandoned calls, I was kind of surprised that that was up a little bit as well. The suspicious person's vehicle property. So where we had in the past 3 years over 200, that number we want to see really, really high. So what that means is that the citizens are reporting anything that they're seeing that isn't in place in their neighborhood, vehicles, whatever it may be. So if the committee is hearing from the citizens, it is better to let them know is call the police, and they'll check out what it is, because from that suspicious vehicle, we've cleared warrants out, or from other jurisdictions as well. The clients have no boundaries, and right now we're working towards the same thing with Edmonton, Leduc, and everybody as well, trying to work collaboratively together to apprehend our clients there. The Form 10 under the Mental Health Act gives the RCMP the authority to apprehend a person and take them to a designated hospital. And so that is also on the increase as well. So when we were talking about up here, that 136 calls, so out of those 136 calls, the RCMP would have apprehended 21 by making that assessment that this person actually is a danger to themselves or a danger to somebody else. And so now we transport them. If they were willing to go with EMS, then that number doesn't increase or anything, because they're willingly accepting that assistance from us. Just for our annual priorities update from last year, for impaired driving, our charges were down. Even in regards to the mandatory alcohol screening, there was direction from our headquarters that we were going to limit interactions with the public as well. A lot of people were scared, and also for the safety of the members themselves as well. Now with the new driving suspensions coming through the province, that's a little bit easier to take the impaired drivers off the road, because it gives more power to police to issue the 72 hours, and also it's progressive as well with the different offenses, if it's their first offense or second offense that way. Regards to crime reduction, Beaumont members are assigned to communicate directly with probation. So we are working with our partners. If any individual that has gone through court and they're on probation, they're on a curfew, they're on any kind of enforceable conditions, that is sent to the RCMP. And then we fan that out to everybody as well. And we do have a offender coordinator within our detachment that keeps everybody updated on that, and which leads to the next offender checks. If an individual has never been to Beaumont before, now he's on enforceable conditions, we will actually do a door knock and welcome them to Beaumont if they want any kind of assistance from us. And then sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't go that well, but at least they know that the police are actually here checking on them as well. Some of the other crime reduction strategies that we have now is that there's also online reporting for certain offenses where there is no suspects. That's what that is for. The callback unit is a unit where also a individual has called, but there's no investigative avenues there. And if the police officer at the callback unit does determine that there is avenues that still need to be explored, then that file actually comes down to the detachment, and then a regular member is assigned to that for investigation. The PROS data center, and Beaumont is not on it yet. There is certain detachments that are on it. It's so you're in your vehicle, you've done a file where it doesn't take too much investigation to do, but you can actually phone that phone number and then dictate your investigation, and they'll type up the file for you, so you stay on the road. So you don't have to come back and utilize that time within the detachment. You're spending more time on the road. The analyst support, this is where I was talking about where the individuals, where the citizens actually have to call us, is it doesn't matter is if there's a suspicious vehicle with a marking on the back or a bumper or whatever it may be, maybe that marking was from Calgary City Police and it was involved in a homicide there, then now we can track the individuals across Alberta or across Canada. And that's where we then know is to, where do we go patrol today? What is the hot spot? Which person do we need to look after? Project Lockup is if there's certain there's certain homes or businesses that are targeted by our individuals for whatever reason, then we will come in, and we do have a coordinator out of K Division. She is trained in CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design, and she will actually do an assessment on that business. We encourage, if the business community is coming to the committee members and saying, this is happening and we need some assistance here, what can we do? You can actually refer them to us, and this assessment is done for free. There's no charge for it. And we also work very closely with Leduc Rural Crime Watch, which their members are trained in CPTED as well. And so we utilize them to give us a hand with that. Secure license plate screws. I know that there's registries that actually sell those. We actually give them for free. And that's also a donation given to us. The screws are paid for by Leduc Rural Crime Watch. I've talked about crime CPTED there. Citizens on Patrol, since I've been here, I haven't had a chance to speak with them, and especially the way everything is right now, but they're integral part of our partnership as well. They're the eyes and ears of the RCMP. They've done a wonderful job here before. I know I've attended their meetings as well. We do have a Alberta crime prevention map. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with one where there is a traffic one where each month is like seat belts and the other one's, distracted driving. This sort of thing is also the same thing right now. Is it'll go through, and it's all for Alberta, just not city, it's rural as well. So it'll be off highway, or it may be the 9 o'clock routine, which you can sign on to on Twitter, and you'll get a message saying it's 9 o'clock right now. Have you checked your yard? Have you put your stuff away? And we also have magnets for those at our detachment. We work very closely with crime reduction units in CAD here. We did have an individual in Beaumont within, I think, the last 6 weeks, where we ended up doing a emergency response team response to apprehend them. And so that's where we used our crime prevention team. Better communication with Crown prosecutors regarding prolific offenders. So what this means is that we have a comprehensive packages that we do for individuals that are, I would say, coming through our revolving door all the time. At the same time, there's also a program called IHOM, Integrated Habitual Offender Management, where we do offer services to the offenders as well. And hotspot checks is, each area that's being hit. Crime mapping is very good right now, and you can access this through the City of Beaumont website as well. It has a 2-week delay on it, but it'll tell you 5 property offenses and missing persons if they were in that area. So if a citizen is looking at that, they can say, oh, you know what? Hey, a block away, somebody broke into this individual's vehicle. So I need to be more vigilant on that. And the lock it and lose it programs we haven't done this year as well. What we did start is a weekly media release to inform the citizens of Beaumont on how many calls we're getting, what kind of files we're getting, and what we're dealing with as well. And we do encourage everybody to get a hold of us. If they're wondering about something or they have a question about anything, we're very transparent, and we want to make sure that we are servicing the community that we're hired to do. Just on property crimes overall, K-Division had come out with, we want to try to reduce property crime by 7% per year. And it's through the initiatives that I've just talked about. This is why I put this here. And in the City of Beaumont, we were able to reduce those 3 offenses overall together to 9.4. So that is with the combined effort, community police officers, the RCMP, and also the citizens here. Community engagement. I know we haven't had a chance too much on this to actually interact with the public, but there was a survey that was sent out, and I think we had a pretty good response overall on that. And now notifying the cities, when we do the media release, it goes on to the City of Beaumont website, also to the local paper. It was brought up to our attention through the CAC is that there's a lot of people that still are more hard copy paper. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we reach out to every community person as well. I won't go through too much about the survey here. I hope the committee had a chance to look at the different categories. And if there is questions, we can talk about that right after the presentation. With everything that was brought to our attention in policing and also working with the Director of Protective Services and communications unit here at the City of Beaumont was very important in this survey as well, and putting everything together here. And so we together came up with crimes against persons, that's a priority for us, and crime reduction and traffic safety. There's initiatives within these 3 priorities that actually addresses everything that the community has spoken about, and they will be reported on regularly back to the committee and to council as well. Just a couple of things there. I did want to highlight some of the great work by our general investigation section. Proactively, we have a 1-person drug unit, but he was able to do over 20 lengthy investigations, 20 search warrants, where he has taken drugs, guns, weapons off the streets of Beaumont as well. And some of those investigations actually take us outside of Beaumont, where the individual lives either in Leduc County or they live in Edmonton, but the offense happened here in Edmonton or in Beaumont as well. And so we try to do media releases on that as well. Regards to the community, it's a great community, but we just encourage the community to call the RCMP more and more. Regards to our detachment support staff, some of the stuff that the regular members are able to do is because of the support staff that administration and council has supported to be within our detachment. We have a supervisor and 4 individuals there. We are looking at also streamlining what administration portions that the regular members are doing can we pass over to the support staff so we actually can be on the road more and be more visible and be more proactive rather than reactive. And it's working right now as well. We are doing more patrols. I'm not sure if the committee has seen, but we've implemented foot patrols. And we work with the community peace officers to do that as well. So we're trying to say is that we're one team. We're not separated just by the uniform. And we've been able to accomplish a lot, especially walking together, because there's certain questions that our members may not be able to answer where the CPOs are able to answer that. In regards to the school resource officer, Officer Hepburn, she's doing a great job. We do supplement and assist her in her schools. What we've done since January I've been here is a RCMP member has been assigned to each school as well. So when Officer Hepburn actually is doing a presentation and there's an element regards to anything where the RCMP can help out as well, they work very well together to do that. And nothing to take away from her current job, because she's doing 99% of the work there. And then we just come in and also assist her with that. And because we're also trying to break down those barriers and, make it more friendly as well. Thank you very much for your time. That is my presentation. If there's any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen, for that presentation. Very much, a lot of information for both of us, a lot of statistics, which Martin's going to love for sure. So what I'd like to do is we have got 2 separate reports almost, the protective services and the RCMP. So I'd like to have committee members ask questions of Mr. Cook, the protective services report first of all, and we'll explore all the various questions on that report, then come back to you, Staff Sergeant, for the questions from the committee on the RCMP if we could. So are there any committee members with questions on the protective services? I believe I see Councillor Van Nieuwkerk's hand went up first. So let's start with Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, and then we'll move on to any other committee members on protective services with their questions. Steve, you have the floor, followed by Martin.
Mr. Chair, are we going to hit the attachments before we go on? Because there's 2 really good meaty attachments in those reports that we haven't heard about yet, or are we just sort of going to let them fly?
Actually, thank you, Mr. Stewart. That's not a bad point to actually. Do you want to have our presenters tackle the attachments first and present them to us, or just go on? Let's do that. Mr. Cook, are you able to talk to the attachment 1, if you could, please, before we go to questions? Sorry, Steve and Martin, if you don't mind, please. Attachment 1, if you could, Mr. Cook.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, it'd be my pleasure. Attachment 1 being the City of Beaumont Municipal Enforcement Priorities Plan for 2021.
Yes.
And then the second attachment would be the Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan for the City of Beaumont as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee again. Along with the RCMP, between February 26th and March 14th, and I'm sorry, I should share my screen here. My apologies again. Along with the RCMP, between February 26th and March 14th, Municipal Enforcement conducted an online survey of residents seeking input on the priorities for municipal enforcement for the coming year. As Staff Sergeant Dollywall pointed out, by the hard work of RCMP detachment members, and then along with our school resource officer, a number of paper copies, if you will, were also submitted for this priority survey of our residents. And to note, I believe it was nearly 50 high school grade 12 students were also canvassed as well, which puts a very unique perspective into the priorities plan. 472 completed survey results were returned for municipal enforcement. This is up from 331 in 2019 and 152 in 2018. It's important to note that when we look at the municipal enforcement priorities, the actual totals, the weight of the totals only varied by 1.9 or 1.93 points, which when looking at it is very, very close from previous years where you had quite a difference in identified priorities. 4 themes emerged for municipal enforcement. Traditionally, there's 3, but 4 themes emerged for municipal enforcement for 2021, which included traffic enforcement, positive youth development, communications, and general enforcement of municipal bylaws. Just touching on each point very quickly, traffic enforcement officers or municipal enforcement officers enforce traffic-related matters underneath the Beaumont traffic safety bylaw, as well as the province of Alberta's Traffic Safety Act. Diving down a little bit further into those details given by our residents, commercial heavy vehicles and general traffic safety are the 2 areas of concern, followed closely by ATVs of traffic enforcement for our residents that they would like to see us focus on for 2021. Positive youth development remains a priority for our community, of course, and that begins with building relationships. Again, as Staff Sergeant Oliwala commented on, it's about getting out, breaking down those barriers and working as one team, and we truly support that. Officers currently visit our skate park, trail system, and playgrounds, of course, as previously mentioned. However, other key initiatives are planned to be explored, including the RCP positive ticking program, physically distance, of course, or other variations thereof. Educational safety videos online, which are currently underway by our ME team, specifically our school resource officer. Of course, a continued visible presence and other opportunities as they arise. Community engagement communications. Enhancing engagement and education opportunities with residents will remain much of the focus for 2021. And this has already begun as we have started to develop those educational campaigns for weed control management, which will be released to our residents in the coming weeks, as well as a recreational vehicle parking campaign, which we're starting to work on with our communications team. That will be released to residents. Again, it's an education-based campaign to see compliance within our community. Further, it was noted in our 2021 priority survey that residents are desiring an online reporting system for enforcement matters. We heard that very, very clearly. We will be conducting an assessment of this option. We do have the technical resources available, but we're conducting an assessment of it prior to implementation to ensure that we're actually set up and have the capacity, if you will, to actually be able to effectively address complaints received through this portal. I anticipate bringing more information forward to council in the future on that, but again, that is another avenue we're exploring. And finally, with our municipal enforcement priorities is the enforcement of our general municipal bylaws. Animal control and unsightly bylaws were identified. However, again, when we start getting into everything from sidewalks through to cleaning up mud from contractors, there was a clear desire by our residents to ensure that we are engaging on all of our bylaws moving forward. Again, looking at the results as presented, and I'm sorry, I should have been scrolling on the screen, my apologies. On page 35 of the report, you can see the closeness, if you will, of the recommended priorities as returned through our survey. My apologies for that. And the second table near the bottom was diving down, as I mentioned, a little bit further into our traffic enforcement, where commercial and heavy vehicle followed by general traffic safety ranked 2.31 and 2.26% of the weighted total received through our priority survey. That was, again, assisted in being conducted through communications. Mr. Chair, you're okay if I move on with the ATE plan report?
Yes, please. Then we'll do questions after that on each report in order. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to bring to the committee tonight the City of Beaumont Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan. I'm going to touch on some highlights as we go through the plan, and then talk specifically more about what the City of Beaumont is doing with our ATE program. Council may be interested to know that ATE or photo radar has been in place in the city of Beaumont since 1998, and of course it's used to deter speeding and to improve traffic and officer safety. This type of enforcement is essential to be used in conjunction with existing and conventional enforcement, and by no means is it meant to replace officer contact. As Staff Sergeant Dollywall pointed out, when they respond to certain type of calls, they can perhaps uncover, I believe it was suspended drivers or unregistered vehicles, but they can uncover other things when they're there. And again, we don't want to take that away. Following provincial guidelines, the use of automated traffic enforcement must be used, or pardon me, must meet specific criteria, which includes but is not restricted to high risk and high frequency areas, high collision areas, and areas of high pedestrian traffic or volumes, if you will. Much of our data comes from municipal enforcement and the RCMP collision reports or collision data that we obtain through them as a part of an evaluation with our program. Focusing on the site selection, which is halfway down page number 2 of the report, or 41 in your council package, ATE sites are not selected randomly. One or more of the following criteria must be met before ATE is deployed in that specific location. And again, following the other criteria I just mentioned about the collisions in high volume areas, just focusing again a bit more on that, areas or intersections where conventional enforcement is unsafe or ineffective. Areas or intersections with an identifiable documented history of collisions. It's that type of data, that type of requirement that allows a municipality to move forward with identifying that area as an area for automated traffic enforcement. Looking at the City of Beaumont's program, starting halfway down on page 3 of the report, or 42 of your council package, the City of Beaumont, we use photo radar automated traffic enforcement in 35 locations throughout the community. Now, I just want to clarify one point with that 35 locations, is each one of those locations may have up to 4 zones. So for example, if you have a 4-way stop, which is identified as one location, each direction may be a zone. So that number of 35 locations is non-inclusive of the total number of zones. The total number of zones within the community is a total of, I'm sorry, it's on the next page, 70, it was in front of me just a moment ago. I believe we're down to 78 locations now where we've actually seen a reduction. Following the guidelines identified above, the locations that are used within the City of Beaumont, we have 3 red lights, 11 speed enforcement, 10 school, parks, and playground zones, and 11 stop signs. Of course, we continuously evaluate our program, and beginning in the fall of 2020, administration took the steps to ensure that every approved ATE location in Beaumont is enforced at least once per quarter. Now, this is important, as if we enforce every location once per quarter, it allows us to build data to either support or not support the continuation of automated traffic enforcement being used in any one of those 35 locations. We have not reviewed the data yet. We are going to be doing that at the end of Q2 of 2021. That'll give us 3 quarters of data. As identified on the top of page 4, Appendix A provides the committee the list of the ATE zones, or the zones or locations, if you will, where ATE is used within the City of Beaumont. Of course, communications is a requirement of the program, and that's a requirement of the province of Alberta. As identified or shown in Appendix B, a sample of how we communicate with the community is provided to the committee. And I want to ensure, council, that not only do we provide that to our residents in our local newspaper, it is also posted online as well. We did have a change in service provider at the end of 2019, so in early 2020, we changed service providers. We moved to Conduit Business Services Canada, Inc. This company came online with us, and unfortunately, due to COVID-19 and a delay in them receiving some technologies, we did have a slight interruption in ATE services in early 2020. However, again, with COVID-19, we had very little traffic on our roads. So the timing of that delay, I mean, was couldn't have timed it any better. When we start looking at the data review for our ticketing, our tickets that have been issued, I bring you to the table at the top of page number 5 or 44. I just want to go over this with the committee. It's important to note, obviously, with 2020, we saw an interruption in our service, and of course, with COVID, we've seen a significant decline in the number of tickets that are being issued. I do want to focus on Q1, though, of 2021, which is provided in the very right-hand column, which shows the number of the second line down, the total number of speed offenses committed within the community at 456, where the total number of offenses issued for those speeding offenses was only 390. And in just a moment, I want to talk about the scrutiny, if you will, that each time a operator pulls the trigger on a camera, the scrutiny that each ticket or violation will actually go through. Total number of red light violations issued in Q1 of 2021, of course, is 16, and 9 tickets were issued, where 314 stop sign tickets or violations were captured, and only 154 were issued. When we discuss scrutiny or talk about scrutiny, every time, and it's provided at the bottom of this page, every time a violation is noted through the operator's system, the ticket is initially evaluated to ensure that a clear photo is taken and that the record, or the photo, if you will, actually meets the violation requirements. Once needed, and then building on that, once the needed information is obtained through the province of Alberta, there's a comparison to the registered owner of the vehicle versus the plate and the make and model of the vehicle. If there's discrepancies, a lot of times the ticket can't be issued based on that. The peace officer that captured the record then again reviews the data to ensure that they're comfortable with the ticket. And then of course at printing of the violation before they're mailed out, there's a final review of the citation or the ticket conducted. Those reviews generate, I'm just enlarging my screen, generate some very interesting statistics that have been provided to us by Conduit. Now, this is only for Q1 of 2021, but I just want to go over this in detail with the committee to show the type of scrutiny that we have in place with our system. For example, focusing on the month of January, 279 records were generated. Now, a record is generated every time the operator picks up a camera and focuses in, or pardon me, captures a violation or what's perceived to be a violation taking place. So of the 279 records generated, 248 were captured as violations, but then through further scrutiny, it was determined that 31 were non-violations, 80 tickets were not issued, and only 168 of those 248 were issued. This is information right from Conduit, right from our service provider, which we're provided monthly. So as you can see in the month of January, only 67.7% of the actual violations that were captured were actually sent or issued to the registered owner. Reasons for disqualification include bad photo, no plate, plates obstruction, no violation, or policy, and that's our operating rules around ATE not being met. I'm very confident in what Conduit provides us and their operations. And again, this data is provided to us from them. We spoke about collision data just a few moments ago, where we obtain a lot of our information. Again, using data collected from Alberta e-collision system, that's the reporting system for collisions in the province of Alberta. 72 collisions occurred at or near ATE zones within the city of Beaumont in 2020. That's an increase of 22% from the 59 recorded from the year previous. The breakdown in the pie chart shows those type of collisions and where they were located. And finally, getting into the appendixes, as mentioned, we provide council with the locations or zones, if you will, of all of our locations within the city of Beaumont. Further to that, examples of the publications that we release for our public, both in the newspaper and online. I have seen them shared, of course, on many social media outlets, so the word is out there. Further to that, too, summary of collisions by zone, type, and severity throughout the city of Beaumont. Now, of course, this is 2019 collision data. It's a little bit old, but at the end of the day, it breaks down and shows you the type of collisions or issues that we're dealing with at or near automated traffic enforcement zones. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the report and the appendixes, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Committee members, I do believe we have one more attachment, the Beaumont Municipal Detachment Year-End Financial Plan. Would that be presented by Staff Sergeant Dollywall or by you, Mr. Cook?
Staff Sergeant Dollywall.
Okay, what we'll do, committee members, have Staff Sergeant present the attachment 2, and then we will then enter it up to questions, starting with Protective Services, then the RCMP report, and going down the reports in order. We'll take a break around 6:20 as we need to. We've been sitting for about an hour now. A lot of information. I do appreciate committee's patience with this, but let's get this last attachment done and then go back and go do question in order as best we can. Mr. Dollywall, you have the floor, please, for the final attachment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I will be sharing my screen here as well. So the Beaumont Municipal Detachment Plan, financial plan is for April 1st, 2022 to March 31st for 27. So 5-year plan. So in this plan, just a quick overview. So this is to be presented to the city every year on what the resource is that required to police the city of Beaumont as well. So in 2020, the ratio of RCTP detachment members is 113.79 per member, which normal is 801 persons per member. We also have to look at this as what kind of policing service do we want to provide for the community? Sometimes it's not all about the ratio, it's also about how efficiently we are providing that service there as well. The count for files per member is a little bit lower than the average, which is 83. Overall, within the last year, our crime has increased by 1%. Just going to the next page, regards to demographics there. I think we've got a census coming in this year, so we'll get that done as well. City of Beaumont is expanding its residential and commercial footprint with our subdivisions, Rive and Elen subdivision coming in, over 700 residential homes. Just regards to the economy, approval of the innovation park will also bring more foot traffic and vehicle traffic into the city here as well. Also, then the residential areas that we were just talking about will increase the population here as well. With the commercial development as well that we're looking at. 165 storefronts businesses, over 330 home-based businesses as well. Lots of investment here. So currently we're sitting at 15 members in Beaumont Detachment, RCMP members. So where you see we have 2 supervisors, 1 commander, and 10 constables. 2 of the other constables is the drug constable and our community policing victim services person. To keep in mind here as well is that each year when we're given the budget for 15 members, it's very difficult to have the 15 members throughout the year because of special leave, pat leave or mat leave, and other considerations as well. So sometimes it's about maybe budgeting for 13 or 13 and a half members to see that. So 15 members are quite low to provide a 24-hour policing presence for the city of Beaumont to deliver adequate policing services for the community that is growing so rapidly. And I bring this to your attention here is also moving forward on the policing service that we want to provide our community here as well. So our suggestion, and this is through our operational strategy branch as well, on progression of what's happening in regards to criminal code activities, and also with the increase in businesses and residents within the city of Beaumont. We're anticipating an increase of 2 members per year, which will also take us into that 24/7 policing presence as well. And we have put some initiatives into here as well, regards to how long can each equipment last. And when we're looking at equipment, some of this items that we can't actually negotiate because they will be mandated either by the government or by the organization as well. And some of the big ticket items are body worn cameras, getting a new pistol, ballistic shields, portable ones, and those would be for the high risk entries where you cannot wait for the emergency response team to come by because of personal safety to an individual. Just on that, there are some organizations where the front doors of police cars are also ballistic proof because you are taking cover behind there. That might be the only cover that you have. The breaching equipment for the immediate action rapid plan, that should be a must for each and every detachment here as well. Looking at some less lethal weapons as well, rather than going to lethal force all the time because of the situations that we encounter, and then the hard body armor. There is some GPS tracking that they're looking at for members, especially more so even in the rural, but also if we are doing a foot pursuit here, you will know for officer safety where your individual is. And then the life cycle for the in-car cameras as well. And I think the committee has been updated on AFRAC system, which every so often needs to be updated. And then that would be the cost of that as well. And that's our financial plan there for the next 5 years.
Thank you, Staff Sergeant Dollywall. Okay, committee members, what I'd like to do, I'm looking at roughly 6:10. I'd like to go back and allow committee members, to ask questions of the protective services portion of the report this evening. Then we'll take about a 10-minute break after that, and coming back afterwards, we'll tackle the RCMP report, Municipal Enforcement Priorities Plan, Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan, and lastly, the Beaumont Municipal Detachment Multi-Year Financial Plan. So I realize a lot of information, committee members. I do realize that, and I do appreciate your patience in getting through the questions accordingly. So let's start with Committee Member Van Newkirk on protective services, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just scrolling back to the top here of where my first question is. I've got 3 questions here in the first attachment, and the first one is on page, I believe it's 18 of 64, and it is relative to the fire service membership training hours. My question for Mr. Cook is, that number of training hours would be relevant to the number of staff each year, so that you could see how many training hours per staff member. I just wonder how many hours per staff member, that breaks out to, because I think it's important to note that as well, right? You can see that there's an increase, in 2015 up to 6,000, and then it decreased down to 4,300. And then, we can understand how there was a reduction in 2020, but just a look at how the membership has fluctuated over those years, and, hours per staff member. Would you comment? Would that be a more useful measure of training?
Excellent. Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk. Thank you for the question. We calculate these hours based on the attendance of our staff, both full-time and volunteer, to specific training events. In addition to that, to our our quarterly weekend training events, which we conduct on Saturday. We have one coming up next Saturday, the Saturday after the long weekend, as well as to our weekly training nights. We could measure this very simply in taking the total, dividing it by our average number of volunteer and full-time members, which we keep a complement of 40. That is our target. We're currently sitting at 40. We fluctuate due to transition of members leaving the community, moving on to other jobs, getting full-time jobs with other departments, of course. And we take those hours and we very simply figure out the amount of staffing that have been at events, times that by the number of hours that that event is to determine these numbers. So just very quickly, as you were asking the question, in 2020, 47.65 hours on average is spent by our members, and in 2019, 124.8 hours. The challenge, though, with these numbers is that we do have a lot of occasions or a lot of times when some of our members may not be available for a period of time. Focus on our volunteer members, which is the core of our group. We maintain 36 dedicated volunteers that train to the exact same standard as a full-time firefighter in any agency or fire service. But there are times where they're unable to commit for some period of time and attend training scenarios. It's a tough, rather than breaking it down by the individual, it's very, very tough to get into the finite numbers. So if we were to look at averages again for 2019, would be 124 hours per individual based on 40. Hopefully I answered your question, sir.
Yeah, no, that's good. I can see you've been very precise with the calculation of these numbers based on attendance and such, and I won't get into questions of attendance and all that. Second question, Mr. Chair, is around weed inspector. Very simply, Mr. Cook, does our weed inspector inspect for weeds? Or response-based? And I think this will be the third or fourth time I've asked this question, and I'm going to beat this horse a little bit. Thank you.
Certainly. Through the chair to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. The answer to your question will be a yes and a yes, I believe. Our weed inspector, who started back with us yesterday, who is seasonal, proactively patrols our community, the municipality, looking for weeds, basically infractions or areas of concern. Our particular weed inspector we brought back again this year. This is his third year, perhaps fourth year he's returning to us, and he knows our community well. He knows the history. And very well educated in the weed and noxious weed area. We also respond on complaints as well. Complaints either taken through our enforcement line, complaints that are given in person, or through other avenues, through parks and facilities, for example, he will investigate. Our weed inspector actually used to work under parks and facilities. There's a relationship there, and we are maintaining that, and I'm certain that our inspector will maintain that.
Okay, well, that's great news, because the title suggests that they would inspect for weeds. One of the common answers that we've got in the last few years is that, bylaws are in fact complaint driven and not a proactive side of things. So the weed inspector is an anomaly in that service or response, I would say then. So secondary to that, two of the numbers that were presented were on the weed and the number of weed complaints. I think it was 97 or something, and then right below that was just unsightly complaints. How do you draw the line between unsightly and weeds? Because often unsightly contains weeds. So what would be your determining factor there?
Excellent. Through the chair to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. Excellent question. Thank you. Unsightly complaints in this case are non-weed driven. So that would be something where there's construction equipment or building materials compiled. That could be a case where we have residents who are piling their own personal effects outside of their property. That is an unsightly complaint as well. In addition to the weed complaints as presented are specific for our weed inspector from the 2020 year.
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question, I guess, is because we did do some work with the bylaw last year to update and make it more descriptive, and to hopefully make some enforcement of those unsightly areas a little more, I don't even know how you would say it, more clear. It is less discretion, and there's more of a list in that bylaw now, where there was a lot of officer discretion before. Last question, what's the current status of the new fire truck that was approved in the last budget?
Through the chair to Councillor Van Newkirk, the status of our replacement aerial apparatus is the RFP has been completed. Working with our administration team, we have awarded the RFP, and we are just working through the final documents with them right now. Anticipated delivery time is 390 to 420 days build time, which is average for a device of that type and caliber.
Awesome. Thank you. That concludes my ME questions, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Stout, you're up, followed by John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies. I just lost my connection there for about 5 minutes ago. It took me a minute or so to get a few minutes to get back in. So I'm afraid I missed the end of the last report from Sergeant Dollywell, Staff Sergeant, I should say. Are these questions confined to the first report, or are we going at large? You're muted.
I apologize, sorry. I would prefer to deal with protective services first if we could, Martin, and then go down each of the categories as best we can. A lot of reports are all together at once. Makes it difficult if you jump around too much. I want to try and keep it on track as best we can. Thank you.
Totally okay with that. That would be my preference too. Thank you. I'll just confine myself to the 2020 Protective Services Annual Report. A couple of quick questions. Thanks for the report, Mr. Cook, and thanks for the presentation. Couple of things. One thing puzzled me and one thing I wanted to ask you a question about. The first thing, on page 8, which is page 13 of the package, there's a column of, Bill knew I would ask questions about this. There's a column of, there are 3 columns of statistics, top 5 moving traffic violations, top 5 non-moving traffic violations, and a bylaw violation. Don't know if you can see them all. And I was curious as to what this actually meant, why some things were reported twice in different columns, and also why the numbers didn't altogether jive. So for instance, 2020, park heavy vehicle without permit, a count of 21, and then it's repeated in the bylaw violation as a count of 21. But then we've got for 2019, park where prohibited, a count of 42. But then on the bylaw violations, the 2019 park where prohibited is 16, so a third of the value. And there are other discrepancies between park within 5 meters of a fire hydrant, park within 5 meters of a stop yield sign, and then I think the park heavy vehicle without permit does for 2018 does jive, both at a count of 6. All I was trying to do was to interpret that. What is that actually telling me, and why is there a difference in some cases and not in others?
Certainly. To Councillor Stout, through your chair to Councillor Stout, my apologies. As provided to me by our municipal enforcement team lead, the bylaw violations found in the 3rd column from the left are the violations of our traffic safety bylaw, where the first 2 columns, I understood, are our violations under the Traffic Safety Act. Traffic Safety Act is provincially driven, where our municipal bylaw obviously is our traffic safety bylaw. That would contribute to differences, although some numbers align, would contribute to differences as between the violations as presented.
Okay, so the violations where the number of bylaw violations is lower than the number, and it always is, I think, just looking at that, is lower or equal to the non-moving traffic violations. That's because a bylaw has been violated in one case, but not necessarily in another.
An officer has the opportunity, depending on their authority, I should start by saying, an officer has the opportunity to either issue a violation or a warning, for that matter, under the Traffic Safety Bylaw or the provincial or the Traffic Safety Act. It's officer choice. I can't really comment as to why they may choose one to another. I would honestly have to ask each one.
And that's fine. Thank you. That's an operational question. I'm not. I just wanted to understand what those numbers meant. Thank you. And you've explained that, I believe. Okay. The other question I had was on page 12, 17 of the package, and it's regarding the fire department response statistics, the medical category, because I noticed that this. From 2010 to 2016, it's fairly constant. It's hitting around an average of 50 to 60, or 40 to 50, really. And then in 2017, it goes up to 47, 2018, 106, and then 2019, 222 and 225. So it's just grown by a factor of 4 in a couple of years. And I just wondered if it's growing much faster than the population. I just wondered if you had any comments on that, or if there was any kind of explanation.
To Councillor Stout, through your chair, there are a few hypotheses as to why those numbers are climbing the way they are. The first I'd like to offer is that approximately 2 years ago, so that would be in line with 2018 to 2019, we identified that our dispatch protocols with Alberta or through Alberta Health Services for our medical first responders were not complete, if you will. We were only responding to very, very specific calls, and that was full-on cardiac arrest or respiratory arrest style calls or things of that nature. We went through, adjusted the protocols to where they needed to be, so we can intervene with life-saving interventions for a resident or somebody in their community that requires them. And we did see an increase from that. Now, having said that, with that adjustment of those protocols, that's not to say we weren't dispatched to some other types of calls with AHS when an ambulance was more than 20 minutes away. So to my second point to your question is, there's a lot of times where a ambulance may be 20 minutes away or so, and we're called as a first response. A little bit different than a medical first responder program, and it gets a little confusing, but very simply, Alberta Health Services needs a little bit of help. They're a little ways away. We get the call, we go out, we start taking care of that individual until Alberta Health Services arrives.
Okay, thank you. So these are not necessarily calls for service within Beaumont. They may be external as well.
No, they are all call for services within Beaumont. Some of the calls, though, may be, you can call it mutual aid to Alberta Health Services, if you will. Again, if the ambulance in Beaumont is currently transporting somebody to a hospital in Edmonton, and a subsequent call comes in, and the nearest ambulance is more than 20 minutes away, and let's say it's a Bravo call, so something fairly minor. No call is minor, but I'll use that term. We may get called to provide that assistance until such time as that ambulance arrives.
Okay, thank you. So I guess the point I was getting to was that we would expect to see the more elevated levels continuing in the future then, based on assuming we don't change our protocols again.
Trends are indicating that we're around 65 or so percent, plus or minus, sorry, that's just some quick math, medical calls, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stout. Mr. Stewart, you have the floor, please, for your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I only have one question, but I do have a quick comment based on the answer to Councillor Stout's last question. It would be nice, I guess, to figure out and see how often our fire department is out doing medical calls while the ambulance is out of town, to see if that to see what that stat's really like, because we need to upgrade the qualifications of our fire service to cover AHS's gap. That would be nice, but that's not a question for tonight. That's just a food for thought. The question I do have tonight is near and dear to my heart, because it has a direct correlation on our ability to grow and develop and whatnot, and that's the HERF requirements, the high intensity residential fire requirements. Just wondering how we're making out with those.
Excellent. Through your chair to committee member Stewart, thank you very much for the question. High HERF, high intensity residential fire requirements, are part of the National Building Code Alberta edition for the fire service. They are currently under review, and we are working on that right now. And we plan to come forward with a report to council in the near future to identify our current standing with that requirement.
No, and I appreciate that, because like I said before, our inability to meet those places certain restrictions on our ability to build structures and things. So looking forward to that report when it comes.
Certainly. Thank you.
And that's all from you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Seeing no further questions, committee members, I propose we take a 10-minute break. I'm showing 6:24 on my clock, so we'll convene back at 6:34 to continue with the questions, starting with the RCMP report, followed by municipal enforcement, priorities plan, and so on. We'll see you back here in approximately 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Committee, we are back live again. Thank you for joining us again. And our next section of questions will be regarding the RCMP first report presented by Staff Sergeant Dhaliwal. Any questions from committee members on the RCMP report as presented? Councillor Van Newkirk, you have the floor of the first question, called by Councillor Barnhart and then by Councillor Stout.
Yeah, thank you. And this question fits in this section, but it would also maybe fit in the next section as well, but I'll answer it now or ask it now. And it's particularly around residential speeding. So it's been brought to my attention numerous times in 21 already that residential speeding has brought concerns to neighbors and neighborhoods. And specifically, a couple of council meetings ago, we spoke about an area in Triumph Estates where there's a straight piece of road. There's increased construction traffic, increased speeds on those straight pieces of road. I was notified of another area closer to the clubhouse in Colonial Estates where there's a straight piece of road, and speeds tend to increase. So when those instances are brought to myself, I direct them to municipal enforcement and the RCMP. Just wondering if you could comment on the ability of the RCMP and ME to respond to those types of concerns and some of the tools that you have available. I don't think you guys install speed bumps per se, right? So, there's people who figure their speed bumps will slow people down. Well, that's not something that, enforcement looks at. If you could just speak to the residential speeding, some of the tools you have and some of the approaches that you would take to deal with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. So what we normally do is it's a group effort. So when I get a complaint, I will share that with Protective Services as well, with the city. And so we're all on this same page in regards to that. Or if they get a complaint, they let us know as well. So we've got our regular members in the area that's patrolling as well, or they may sit there during that particular time, if it is a certain time. The other thing that we've done in the past as well is used our citizens on patrol. We do give them a radar gun. It's not calibrated, but it's pretty close to what the speed should be because it's checked by the RCMP member before that. We then actually go there different times as well. So it's just not that one time if we do get a complaint. So now we've got 3 or 4 different avenues to say, okay, is there a problem, or was this one off, or what's going on in that area? After we take that information, then we would discuss it. Everett and I would discuss that also to see if there was going to be an option to make this actually an ATE zone because it is happening more often, or was there any enforcement done by the RCMP in regards to that. Then we actually report back to the individual that made that complaint in their area as well. So then we close the loop on that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you for the clarification on kind of the process there. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Steve. Kathy, you're next, followed by Martin, followed by Perry.
Thank you, Chair Daniluk, and good to see you back again, Staff
Thank you.
Sergeant Harp Dhaliwal. I've worked with you before, and I've really enjoyed the time that I've spent with you. So glad to see you back.
Thank you.
And welcome back to the safest city in Alberta. And,
That's right. Glad to be back.
I checked that to make sure we still are, because one of those things you have to kind of keep checking. But yeah, no, very, very glad that you're here. And I think I just have one is going to be seen as a cheeky comment, but this is that you are welcoming repeat offenders at the door. You're going to the door and saying, hi, we don't welcome other people to our community face to face. And so it's just the members of council probably know where that's coming from, welcome services. But I just thought that was very interesting. I understand why you're doing it, Staff Sergeant, and I do think that that's a great service that you're providing. So I do want to just underline that you're doing that. My other question, though, and this one really is a question, is regarding spousal abuse. honestly, I had to go looking for it. It's way down the bottom of the page. And I was looking for domestic violence. It's not called that. It's called spousal abuse now. And I just wondering your impression. Are we going in the right direction there? Do we have other initiatives underway? It seems to be a very high number from just looking at the number. I know that it's not, prevention is something that requires collaboration between the FCSS department as well as yourself. Any comments on that? Anything council could do to support you in that? I'm all for that.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. I think it's also education and working together. I know that when we were here before and the environment was different, where we were able to hold presentations, we actually did have group presentations with FCSS and our victim service partners, and we opened up a live presentation. What I do find is, though, sometimes we only get 5 people or 15 people, but I think it's still worthwhile doing that education, because then those people go on and talk to the individuals that are actually affected, because sometimes the people that are at this presentation are just there for more information. Maybe they're affected because of friendships or association to somebody as well. And so right now, there is a lot of stuff that's online, but you can't replace that human contact. And that's more important for us. What we've been doing right now is working with victim services as well. Each time we do go to the domestic calls, those domestic calls or spousal abuse, as it's reported here, isn't always physical violence. It's also arguments that we go there. So we do have a safety tips check sheet that we actually provide to the individuals in the home.
Okay. Well, anything we can do to prevent that from increasing or occurring in the first place, would love to see more initiatives in that regard. And I agree with you. It's the people who we know about that we'd like to help, but they don't necessarily have the ability to reach out and get the help when they need it. So again, it's support for mental health, addictions, all of the above, right? So thank you for everything that you do. And again, glad to see you back.
Thank you very much. I was just going to make a comment on there is where the committee can help out is please encourage the individuals to contact either victim services or just even our detachment for more information, because some of it is they don't know what to do because they've never relied on anybody. So that's sometimes the biggest thing, is they're afraid, because certain folks, and we'll say spouses, male or female, have never had that responsibility to even go register a motor vehicle. And our victim services, we can actually help with that. And we can help them through the court system. We can help them, to go to a registry, tell them on how to get insurance. And so it's basically with any kind of thing, because sometimes what I hear is, I didn't want to call the police because it's not a police matter, right? But we don't know it's a police matter until we determine that. And then we can always give them, we can always give them, and even our staff there, is that you never say it's not a police matter. We always give them another avenue of assistance. So they actually have somebody to phone, and victim services for us have been incredible for our area.
Glad to hear that, that approach. And as well as, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, is that people are not seeing the police as where they can go to get that kind of help as much as to report something and report a crime, and of course that's intimidating for some. So breaking down that barrier is very important. And I appreciate what you're doing on that regard. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnhart. Mr. Stout, you're next, followed by Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back, Staff Sergeant Dollywell. Thank you for the report and the presentation again. I had a couple of quick statistical questions, inevitably. I direct everybody's attention to page 5 of the RCMP report, page 25 of the package, I think it is. The categories of crime statistics. I was a touch concerned, despite our state there low CSI crime severity index rating and status, as Councillor Barnhart has already alluded to, as one of the, if not the safest municipality in Alberta. My concern there was the category homicides and offences related to death. I noticed that we had two counts in 2016 and then nothing for 2018, 19 and 17, 18 and 19, and then 6 in 2020. So that's more than in all the other 4 years put together. Is there an explanation of that? One of the thoughts that occurred to me was that there might be 6 counts of an offence, but it was all related to the same incident, for instance.
I am not, sir, thank you for your question. I am not familiar with any offense of homicide or a offense related to death that's happened here, unless committee chair, if you can educate me on that. But I think that would be a data entry error, because each file that comes in has to be scored on what the offense is at the end, and that's where these numbers are pulled from as well. And so I believe this is a clerical error in the data entry. We did not have 6 homicides or offenses related to death. If we have gone to a sudden death, which was a medical emergency or whichever it may be, that may have been wrongly scored on our end.
Okay, so because that's not typically not a crime.
That's correct.
But okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So, so it looks like a clerical error. Would we then expect to see a correction of that in a subsequent report?
I will be looking into that, definitely. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Second question was down the next page, page 6, 26 of the package, where and just please humor me here. Just run me through this. I was looking at municipal motor vehicle collisions, fatals. There's 4 categories: fatals, injury, MVC, property damage, MVC, reportable, and property damage, MVC, not reportable. And then they're summarized at the total motor vehicle collisions. Now, good news is there are no fatals for 5 years, which is great. That's good to see. So the totals then just represent the summary of the other 3 categories, really. Can you remind me, what's the difference between reportable and not reportable for a property damage motor vehicle collision? Is that just the amount, the value of the damage?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. And that is correct. It is set at $2,000. And I'm not sure if that's the insurance companies that have set that to be reportable, non-reportable. But that's the difference. It is the value of the damage. Right now, most of the vehicles, as you see the numbers there, anytime you even have a fender bender, it's over $2,000.
Yes.
and those are reported. And that's where the numbers come from for us.
Yep. You put a dent in your bumper, it's typically $2,000, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the non-reportable ones must be very minor then.
They are. And so sometimes what happens is they will actually come into the police station because, as I said before, is some people aren't confident or they're scared because they've never been involved in an accident. They'll come to the police station and say, this person hit me, I have their information. And then they realize that, okay, well, there's not that much damage after our officers have investigated that, and then it becomes non-reportable. They can even go to their insurance company at that time, go through the insurance or not go through the insurance. But they're, I think, just looking for that validation to make sure that I do not get charged for not reporting an accident.
Yep. Yes.
And be safe on that side.
I've been in that situation myself occasionally. Thank you. Okay, the comment I wanted to observe was that those total for motor vehicle collisions have increased over the 5-year reporting period, right? There's a 5% increase, and that although it's been fairly stable around 200 for the preceding 3 for 17, 18, and 19, and 2020 did show a small drop off of 15%. But that, of course, is that's the pandemic year, especially the way you report it, because you start from March the 31st and report to April the 1st, right? So that's actually quite neatly a year of pandemic restrictions. So compare with provincial traffic underneath, the total provincial traffic offences, which were down 55% in the same for the 2020 versus 2019. So there's a definite rising trend in motor vehicle collisions in that data.
Mhm. Yes, sir. And so just to be clear, and yes, our fiscal year, financial fiscal year is from April 1st to March 31st. The stats are presented from January to December. And
Is that right?
Yes, the only reason for that is our operational strategy branch did get some feedback from municipalities saying most of our stuff that we do is on a calendar year. Can you please try to report that so it kind of coincides with all the initiatives that the municipalities have? So the budget year is, yes, what you explained, but these stats are just for January to December. I've noticed an increase in traffic in Beaumont overall as well. It could also be, and I'm guessing here, I don't have any stats regards to this, is Beaumont, we also have a big youth population that's growing. And I'm not sure if it is more with the youth learning to drive or anything like that, why there's a difference in the increase by 5% over the years.
Thank you. Appreciate the response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hendricks, you're up, please.
And I too would echo welcome back. Certainly enjoyed the last round when you're here.
Thank you.
And part of what I really enjoyed last time was the level of information that we received, and that takes us to the visit that we had at K Division, and you were kind enough to take us as a council through. What an eye opener! You realize how involved the RCMP are in Alberta. Beaumont, yes, but in Alberta, and certainly do an outstanding job looking after the day-to-day lives of Albertans. So hats off to the RCMP. Also, I've had an opportunity to go to a depot, and certainly that was a tremendous eye-opener. So I got to understand the level of the sheer involvement in what it takes for an individual to go from somebody that wants to be an RCMP officer to being an RCMP officer. Huge steps, and again, the training is remarkable. But I would like to sort of add that piece to whatever the next council is going to be, commissioned here on, that this group gets an opportunity to go through that K Division building, at least one visit, because it just sends you a whole other message about what you have as such a valuable asset, within your community. Also was able to be part of the original construction of the RCMP facility here at Beaumont, and constantly asking if you guys are looking at expanding, or if you need any capital dollars, how does that all work? Right now, it looks like other than armament for personnel, you're not looking for additional cell space. So that's good. And it doesn't look like we're looking for more capital type projects. So that's good. One thing we did talk about previously in these same reports was the 24-hour sort of storefront service that some people are looking for. Is that in the offering at all? Where people from Beaumont, our taxpayers, can go to the front door at any given time and at least see somebody if there's an event or what have you?
Thank you for your question, sir, and thank you for your comments. I really appreciate those. I believe it, as I did present during the report, is what kind of policing services are we looking for as council, as administration? And I think we're all here to serve the public here. And I think that's also a council decision. Once that decision is made, I would work with you to make sure that we move towards that. But then it's also going to be resource heavy as well. And that's where the budgeting is very important. And whatever I can offer information wise to move it forward to see what it looks like, I'm willing to discuss that as well.
There was some years ago, there was a check stop on 50th Street. and and everything's being discussed when you go through a check stop, including some tags that are old and yada yada yada. So people were sent literally on a Friday night and say, well, you better get to the RCMP station on Saturday in Beaumont to get these cleared up, whatever the issues were. And of course, locked up solid, and there's a phone at the front. So just wondering if that was a possibility. So thank you for the answer. The other one was just on the 56A Street. We had a lot of conversation in previous councils and certainly with the various RCMP members regarding 56A Street. There have been some studies done, some let's call it data statistics done on vehicle counts and speed. Probably don't have an answer tonight, but it'd be nice to know if that's improved for you. It was quite controversial when we opened that road up because it initially it wasn't supposed to be a through road. It was opened up. It became a shortcut for people, and then all of a sudden we had 3,000 vehicles a day going down what was otherwise a residential road. So at some point, wouldn't mind just getting an update on whether or not those people that are affected on 56A Street, how they're making out with the traffic. So.
Sir, thank you for that comment. I am not familiar with any complaints that have come through to my attention on 56A Street, but what I can do is look into it, and I will provide that to Mr. Cook, and then he can get it to council and the committee here.
Yeah, appreciate it. And again, welcome back. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Hendricks. Mr. Munkoff-Swain, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Committee Chair. Staff Sergeant Delarole, again, welcome back. Really thank you for the report here, very extensive. No questions from me today, more just a comment. I just wanted to acknowledge the increased communication that we're getting, not just as council, but as city residents. You've been working really well with city administration to help get some of those communications out, and it has been noticed by the public. And I get a lot of comments from folks who have noticed that difference. So thank you for all the work on that. It certainly goes a long way to help improve the great reputation that you guys already have. So just a comment on that. Thank you, and keep it up. Really important that we let our residents know what's going on with the RCMP. So thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that comment. And like I said, I try to preach that is that I'm so glad that the public is coming to the committee members and advising you what we're doing good, what we're doing bad, because even when I do hold my town hall meetings, I do want to hear the bad, because otherwise we can't improve. So thank you for those comments.
Thank you, committee members. That appears to conclude our questions on this section. We'll have Staff Sergeant come back to us in a few minutes when we get back to the very end of the report session. The next area for questions is Municipal Enforcement Priorities Plan, as presented by Mr. Cook a few moments ago. Are there any questions from committee members on the Municipal Enforcement Priorities Plan as presented? Okay, seeing no questions on that section, excellent. We'll move on to the next section, the Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan. Now, I will preface council, as we are aware, a notice of motion was given to council last Tuesday, coming back to council next Tuesday at committee council meeting. So if you have questions on this section, please restrict your question to only to information gathering. We want to avoid any kind of debate because we have notice of motion was made and coming back to council next week. So having said that, I'll open the floor to questions on Automated Traffic Enforcement Plan. I see Councilor Munkoff-Swain's hand up first, followed by Councilor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Mayor Stewart. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and I really appreciate you prefacing this discussion about not getting to debate. And I've got a couple of questions that I'll take advantage of you folks being here. The first one regarding ATE, you referenced up front there are 35 locations and how you choose those locations. I just like if you could answer the following. Does council have any influence on the selection of those locations? Recognizing that there's guidelines that you have. If council wanted to be a bit nitpicky and choose, we want these versus those, does council have that, or is that strictly a decision that administration makes with the RCMP?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Monkoff, swaying through the chair. To your point, no, the each location that automated traffic enforcement is deployed in actually has to be approved and signed off on by the RCMP, and it has to meet the criteria set out within the the automated traffic enforcement guidelines as put forward by the province of Alberta. Today, we are still under a freeze, if you will, of adding any new zones, and that's driven by the province. I believe it was 2019, mid 2019 that came out. So we're unable to add any more zones. We can take away, of course, and that's why we're looking at our data the way we are now. We did hear some time ago that council has a desire for ATE to be used in and around playgrounds, parks, and school zones. Keeping that in the back of our mind, we have focused that. In fact, that was captured in the report. But again, back to your point, every location has to be signed off on by the RCMP, and ultimately it comes down to our staff sergeant.
Thank you very much. Just a follow-up, if you don't mind. There obviously is a motion in front of us potentially cancel this. I'm just curious if you've considered what the impact might be on staffing. Obviously, the A in ATE stands for automatic. So if that was gone, then we may need people and to help manage that. So I'm just curious what that might mean from a resourcing perspective.
Right.
I think we should speculate.
Excellent. Thank you for the question. To your point, if we cancel the contract, we have reached out, or I have reached out for to determine exactly if there is a cost to the city of Beaumont with the contract to serve the 180-day notice. With regards to staffing, none of our staff would be impacted by the termination of our automated traffic enforcement program. Quite the opposite, where we would need to look to staff up. And to your point, what would that look like? I don't have the data in front of me. I believe a couple of years ago we did present that it would is estimated at the time, off the top of my head, I want to say it was 28 officers would replace the type of service that we were getting, but that was with our old provider. I would have to look into that and get back to the committee or council with a better look or a more detailed response. I'm sorry, I wish I could provide more.
No problem at all. I figured I'd take advantage of you being here. I assume you'll be joining us for the fun next week, and so just put that bug in your ear there. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Committee Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Van Newkirk, you're next, followed by Mayor Stewart, followed by Mr. Stout.
Yeah, thank you. I've got two questions, and they're both kind of just digging a little deeper on the information that you've shared already. The first one is just is on page 44 of 64. I don't know if we have an ability to bring that page up again. It's page 5 of the ATE report. Specifically, what I'd like to ask for some more clarity on, or some more discussion on, is the percentages that are large. And there we go. Yeah. So in the plus minus between 2019 and 2020, and I know you hit this kind of high level already, but I just want to dive back into this again, because when you're having 68 to 83% reductions in, volumes, be it tickets and offenses and tickets issued, it brings to question what and why. Just wondering if you could speak through that one more time, just to try and provide a little bit more clarity on what could bring that on and what you suspect has caused that.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Van Newkirk through the chair. Looking back at the 2019 year and prior to, we were served, or we were in a long-term relationship with a previous service provider for ATE services. I believe we initiated that relationship 2011 or 2012 in there. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. They were generous with their time in later years and assisted us in providing services throughout the community. Throughout the last few years, 2018 and 2019. I can't really speak before that, as I wasn't a part of this program at the time. But I can assure you that as we move forward with implementing our new contract, or our contract with our new service provider, one of the areas of focus that we ensured we maintained and written into our business rules is the absolute that this is the amount of set hours per week that we're to be provided, no more. And here's the rules around that. What will that look like? Further to that was discrepancy. To use layman terms, it's not you're going to show up and you're just going to go to the fishing hole for in layman terms. You're actually going to show up, you will work in these areas, and again, to collect that data for administration so that we can have a good look at what's actually happening in all of our zones, so we can make determinations if we need to reduce our zone coverage from the 35 further down. And just to an earlier point, my apologies if I may add, since 2017 to 2020, we've actually reduced our number of zones from 87 to 76. So I just wanted to clarify that point as well. Sorry, I hope I answered your question for you.
Yeah, so is the data collection that the previous provider did, is that included in those 5,000 numbers then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is.
So it actually isn't fair to compare apples and apples to 2019 and 2020 then, because the data is skewed because they were working with the municipality. Is that fair to say?
With the change of provider, the numbers, obviously with COVID, change of providers, we had a delay. 2020 is very skewed, yes, but trends indicate, and our business rules support that Q1 of 2021 is actually showing the trend for the total number of speed offenses committed within the municipality at 456, that we were to times that by 4. We're looking at that 1,621, which is very close to our 2020 numbers. Now, of course, that's just an estimate, but it is a far cry from our 2019 number. So we're getting good service. We're seeing a reduction in tickets being issued. And again, we're staying on top of that data for more of a good detailed look at the numbers being presented or provided to us by the provider or service provider.
Yeah, okay, I think I'm not going to dig any deeper on that. I had a couple more questions that I was going to go for, but I'll pause there. So my second question is different, and apologies if I missed hearing it, but just what is the status of the provincial ATE discussion?
Okay, to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk through the chair. Currently, right now, the program is still. I'll use the term on hold. We cannot add any more zones. Of course, that's been the case since 2019. Currently, right now, the province is working on implementing changes with service providers. In fact, our service provider has been in attendance at a few meetings where they're actually looking at enhancements of the program. I don't have full details as of yet. I'd be more than happy to share them once I do receive them. And I honestly do not have a timeline on that right now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was my next question, is if you were aware of any dates or any milestones or any of that have been set forward. So, okay, thank you. That's it for me on this topic, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Committee Member Van Nieuwkerk. Mayor Stewart, you're up, followed by Mr. Stout.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I only have one question tonight. I know it sort of follows along to Steve's question about the provincial review. When that all came down, the city of Edmonton basically went out and painted all their vehicles yellow and marked them, put flags on them. Have we thought about doing anything similar here?
Excellent. Through your chair to Committee Member Stewart, we have. When we started our contract with our new service provider, the decision was made at the time not to identify our units. We maintained our communications program through the local paper and on social media. Officer safety was the concern. Yes, the city of Edmonton, they have flags, they're painted yellow, they say photo radar on the side of them and have other messages, of course. Since that time, we have had further discussions, and with Staff Sergeant Dollywall, who is new to this program, as obviously he just joined us, and our service provider, we have a meeting coming up, which that is actually one of our agenda topics to discuss. Do we mark our vehicle? Plan to have that discussion, plan to review any safety issues, concerns that have been brought forward since Conduit's come on board with us, and to hopefully make a decision to either maintain it or mark our vehicles and carry on.
Appreciate that follow-up. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't suppose it's possible to get some data from the city of Edmonton on what they found since they've marked their vehicles in terms of incidents and officer safety and things like that. I mean, they've been doing a live in color experiment now for 6-7 months.
Certainly, To committee member Stewart, I haven't reached out. That would be an interesting statistic to grab for sure. And that's, I'm sure I can make that phone call in our review of ours for sure. No, it's an excellent point.
Thank you.
That'd be helpful. I would look forward to that information as well too. Mr. Stout, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I notice everybody else is councillor and I'm Mr.
I apologize, Councillor Stout, sir.
It varies. It varies.
Yes.
It's very, sorry guys, I'm trying to find the groove of that. You can get my head around committee.
Depends if your name starts with ST, I think that must be it. Just Josh Newville. So, Mayor Stewart just asked the question, one of the questions I was going to ask regarding the marking of the automated traffic enforcement vehicles. It is in the report. It actually says cities considered essentially what you said, Mr. Cook. Due to operator safety concerns, no markings have been applied. The same thought occurred to me that the City of Edmonton pretty much immediately put their things in high vis flags and stickers on the side of them. And certainly my own experiences whenever I see one of those, and I see them quite frequently, is that, I check my speed, and if for some reason I've drifted over the speed limit, then I'll definitely take my foot off the pedal. So I think it does have a deterrent effect. Marking the vehicles, which leads me to conclude that maybe not marking them does not. So I'd just like to add my request that we see if that has had any effect in the City of Edmonton, if we can find data on or whether the safety concerns might be justified or not. Second question was regarding the publication of the communication of the automated traffic enforcement locations. I noticed that we list them, and I've checked them in the paper, and I've seen them on the website. We list all the locations where they're going to be on any given date. But I also noticed and I assume this is in the interest of better transparency and communication. But I noticed as well, at the bottom, there's a disclaimer, and it says, and it's on page 9 of the report, 48 of the package. The disclaimer says, additional photo enforcement locations may be added on any of the above dates. Photo enforcement may occur on dates and at locations within the city not listed above. Photo enforcement may not operate on all the dates listed above. And this has been raised with me by residents as, doesn't that defeat the whole object, that disclaimer defeat the whole object of publicizing this? Because we're effectively saying, well, we might not show up at these locations and we might show up somewhere else on any given day.
Certainly. Through your chair to Councillor Stout. You may recall that this is, when you compare it to our old service provider to our new service provider, this disclaimer is very similar in nature. Wording may have changed a little bit, but what this does is this allows the City of Beaumont on any given day, should an operator from our service provider arrive at a location, if that location has construction, for example, or something happening at it where they're unable to set up, it allows them to go to and set up in an alternate location is what that does. Further to that too, it also allows for the fact that if we send an operator to an area where there's really nothing happening, and again, those are the zones where we want to identify. So if we're going to reduce our zones, we capture that. It gives the opportunity for that operator to relocate to another zone, to enforce or to deter speeding in that area as well. It's a practice that we have used long before my time, and I believe certain others do as well. I hope I've answered your question.
Thank you. Yeah, essentially you're saying it's a backup plan if for whatever reason we can't carry out the posted and intended enforcement location.
It could be interpreted as that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee Member Barnhart, you have your hand up for a question on this topic.
It's actually just a quick question. Thank you, Chair Bill, Mr. Daniluk, Councillor Daniluk, Deputy Mayor, all of the above.
All of the above.
Varies.
No, my question is just, I'm just wanting to make sure I've got this right. Does automated traffic enforcement also refer to the doojiggies that are attached to the poles, or is it only are we only talking about cars that have staff in them?
Excellent. Through your chair to Councillor Barnhart, the City of Beaumont has no stationary photo enforcement or automated traffic enforcement whatsoever. All of our enforcement is conducted by an operator who is inside of a vehicle with a handheld device. So this report refers to exactly that, an actual human being with a device monitoring a specific location at a specific time.
Thank you. I seem to remember we had a discussion about that in the past, and I can't remember exactly where we landed on that, but I thought we were going to have some piloted sites or something of that nature to compare the data from that.
Yes, sorry, you're absolutely correct. We actually, in Q3 of 2019, I believe it was, we actually deployed data counters. So there were counters on a pole. You really wouldn't know what they are to see them. That weren't issuing tickets. They were just monitoring traffic, and they were deployed in areas much around Champs Valley School and other areas where our traffic counts were going down to help confirm what we suspected, or to help identify other areas that, if we needed to, we could use photo radar in the future. And of course, that data was obtained with our previous service provider, and of course, the RCMP detachment commander at the time.
So if I could just follow up, Chair, we are
Yes.
not allowed to add any zones. So at this point, we wouldn't be able to add any stationary ones. Is that the crux of the matter, or did we decide we didn't want the stationary ones?
To be honest, I don't know. I'd have to look through previous council motions and such going into the past on stationary sites, red light stop cameras, for example. I don't know. I'd have to go back through council motions and discussions to find you the answer on that one. To answer your question, can we add sites? No. We're currently under that freeze from the province. We actually have had requests from residents for certain areas, Triumph Boulevard, Riker Drive and such. Can we bring up photo radar? And we're unable to, and such. So I hope I answered your question.
Well, thank you. I think you can see where my questions might be going for the next time we talk about this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Member Barnhart. See no further questions. I will draw this section of question to a close. Our last topic for questions from the first section of our meeting is going to be on Beaumont Municipal Detachment Multi-Year Financial Plan. Staff Sergeant Dollywell is back on the camera here. So are there any questions from committee members on this multi-year financial plan for the detachment? Who's up first? Mayor Stewart, you are first, followed by Mr. Hendricks, followed by Mr. Stout.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Dollywell, for preparing this report. It's always nice to see you. We can sort of plan for the future and go forward. I know at one point when you were first coming on here, we had talked about 21 being a good number for a detachment our size. And then I see this report as 2 officers a year over the next 4 or 5 years, totaling 10 officers. So I was sort of just wondering if I can get a feel of where you're heading and what you're thinking.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. I can kind of give you an org chart. So I'll take a few minutes here if you do want to kind of write this down on if we are moving into a 24/7 presence of police officers on the road patrolling right now, because we're trying to do our best right now as well, because we do have the on-call time, but at that time we do have our crime reduction shifts. It is very hard to give you a number to say, you know, because of our proactive patrolling between this time and this time, how many offenses, crimes have we deterred or not deterred and stuff like that. I take it back to my time with, the prime ministers or presidents of the US. When you're bodyguarding, you don't know how many attacks that you actually deterred because of what you do. And that's the officer presence, even in our intervention model, starts at officer presence. So when you have officer presence, I think that's a big deterrent for anybody. So the way we're looking at going into the future, and that's why I've put down 2 members per year, also for budgetary reasons, because it's going to be very difficult, I believe, for the city to come up with 6 members the following year. So what we're looking at here is for the org chart for the RCMP members, you would have a commander in charge, a staff sergeant, and then you would have a sergeant underneath that, because right now the numbers that we're at, our operational strategy branch already bumps us up to a sergeant. So the person that we got last year, we actually said we need a constable because we will do more of the administration with the supervisors that we have. So I have downloaded some of the information and requests to our road supervisors. So we have 2 corporals. So it'll be a staff sergeant, a sergeant, and then you would need basically 4 teams to do that 24-hour policing. So each team would, right now at the minimum, would have 1 supervisor and 3 regular members. And then at the same time, I would like to increase our drug section, and I'm reclassifying that into a general investigation constable right now, because that gives us, when I say us as the city of Beaumont, the opportunity to put 1 more regular member in there with a supervisor, because we are seeing that we are having investigations which take more time, which the general investigation section can do, and where we've taken guns off the streets, meth also. And all of this is, there's a lot of surveillance involved on individuals that we have to do to put a package together to do a search warrant. And this one individual has been doing that with the support of our crime reduction unit from K Division, which is out of Central Alberta District. They've been very helpful. Leduc RCMP Detachment, and he's also been linked in with the analysts in Edmonton City. And that's where I talked earlier about breaking down the borders and getting all the intel that we can. We have an individual that actually is living in Edmonton, but he visits Beaumont right now, that we are doing a big information package on, I will say. And that information is coming to us from other provinces as well. And then our investigation will be forwarded that way. So our 1 individual in drug section, it's very time consuming for him. And some of the tasks that he can't actually accomplish, right? Then it becomes an officer safety issue. So then he doesn't actually do it. Then we can't further that investigation. And then we will always have our 1 community police officer, and which I believe is very important for our community here in the city of Beaumont. He does a wonderful job. Also, as committee member Barnhart has brought this up, regards to the presentations for spousal abuse, mental health, addictions, working well with the youth center, working with FCSS, and also working with the Chamber of Commerce, and also our organizations like the Lions Club. So that's what we're trying to do. And so to say the minimums of 21 people or 21 regular members, that's what we would have. Saying that, right now we've had 15 members here, but through, I was saying it was special leave and everything like that, the city would only be charged for what was actually paid out to the membership. So if you have 15 members, but this year it may be only for 13 and a half members because 1.5 members were not actually at work. And so then that gets taken out of the financials that come out quarterly or at the end of the year when it's reconciled overall. So I know that certain municipal detachments do have more members to compensate for that. And I've been in discussions with Chestermere as well. They're a similar size. They have 19 members. We have 15 right now. We're closer to Edmonton. They're actually a few, 15 minutes or so from the Edmonton or the Calgary area. Right now, there doesn't seem to be too much of a difference of people where Beaumont used to be a small town. And, people say, well, I'm not going to Beaumont because it's so far away. Right now, people actually come to the community, even to shopping or to the rec center. They're looking at all this kind of stuff, which they find is that all the amenities are here. And then eventually they move here as well. I personally know families that have moved in here because this is a great community. And that's where I say is that to have that 21 membership and to provide that policing service, I would say is, this is council's decision as well, and the communities on what kind of policing service do we want to provide to the community.
No, I do appreciate your update on that, because I do know that we're, as much as we're the safest community, I do know we're starting to be, our population is starting to explode. We're starting to be under-resourced if you look at population versus officer metrics. And it's about time we started to look into doing some of this, especially in terms of 24/7 policing. We are growing up, and it's time to start looking at it. So I do appreciate where you're headed, and look forward to future discussions about this topic with my colleagues in the next little while to see what we can do to start mitigating some of this stuff. So thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Hendricks, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And just actually just a bit of a follow-up from Mr. Stewart regarding the drug piece. And I believe we used to call it a Quaker unit that used to work within Beaumont, and then we also used to share the resource with Devon and Leduc, and we had a financial arrangement that we're sharing that system or that group, that unit. Is that still in play?
Thank you for your question, sir. No, it is not in play. There is no financial, I would say, cost to the city of Beaumont when we are utilizing our Central Alberta District crew unit. So we have all those resources that are assisting us. And that's where our one-person drug individual has had over, like I was saying, 19 solid investigations, long-term investigations with the assistance of the crew unit, and also with Leduc RCMP individuals, members. Because a lot of stuff, sometimes, let's say the offense occurs in Beaumont, but they live outside the county or inside the county. And then that's where we share the resources to help each other out. And I think the city of Beaumont is benefiting over that because we utilize them more than they utilize our one drug member.
Okay. And so with that, the DARE program, is that still up and live and well? I realize with COVID, no, but is that something that would come back?
Thank you for that question. Right now, the way the DARE program is going, the RCMP has stopped that altogether. They are looking at other options. We do have one individual in K Division in community policing that has been doing research on that, but nothing has been brought out. I had a school resource officer in Breton Thorsby that was actually paid by the county, and we sent them on a 5-day course to the city of Calgary policing service. And so that's where we got our training, but there is no set drug program anymore for the RCMP to present on.
Right. So when it was here, it was really a big event. Students who passed the course and got their certificate it was a big deal. So it was well received, and it's too bad it's gone quiet. So, but thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Stout, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks again, Mr. Dollywell. Oh, excuse me. Thanks again for the presentation. I'm sorry I missed the latter part of it. That was involuntary. I too am in favour of moving us to 24/7 policing as quickly as we are reasonably able to. The constraint is always resourcing, and the constraint on the constraint is how do we fund the resourcing that we would need to do that. So yeah, but with all deliberate speed, I'd support that, and thank you for coming forward with the makings of a plan to do that. I just had two quick questions to aid my understanding on some of the technical aspects of your report, and this was the bit that I missed. Breaching equipment you refer to as a need. Are we talking like a battering ram or an explosive charge to blow down a door in the cases where you might need to do that? Is that what that is?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question. And that it is a battering ram. We do not do the explosives. If that entry is required, that's when the emergency response team and our explosives disposal unit, they come in and they would be doing that for us. So the reason we need this equipment right now is some of the good work that our members have done here with search warrants, and now they're going into a house where evidence can be destroyed when you're knocking on the door. So, and I think there's been a lot of controversy on the news through the US and a little bit of in Canada as well with the no knock warrant is what it's referred to as well. So when the evidence shouldn't be destroyed or flushed down the toilet as well. You're correct. That is, it has nothing to do with explosives though. It's just a battering ram.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the clarification. And do we have no knock warrants in Canada? Is that a possibility, or is that just a US thing?
Thank you for that comment. Yes, we do have those. It is approved as well, depending on the circumstances, because if the judge is not satisfied with the grounds that are written in the information to obtain the warrant, then that is not granted.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the clarification again. And the other one I wanted to ask you about was the extended range impact weapon, the 40mm less lethal. Is that what I would have known in Britain as a baton round or a rubber bullet? Is that the same sort of device we're discussing?
Yes, sir. Thank you for those comments. To put it simply, yes, it is. We've had beanbag guns before as well, where it's actually a beanbag that's been put together and it comes out. It will give you a welt, but it doesn't penetrate the skin.
So it's just a nasty bump, basically.
Yes, and sometimes it's to distract the individual from what they're doing and for their safety as well, and the less lethal option. And I think we've all seen in the news on certain individuals when we don't have less lethal options on how bad things can go for the police officer and for the public.
Yep, completely support that. I'm all in favor of the less lethal option where it's available and where it makes sense. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to understand that what these pieces of equipment were, and without any ambiguity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, committee, seeing no further questions, I will bring the question period to a close. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Mr. Dollywell, thank you for your attendance this evening, information, and the committee and the question and answer for us. Thank you very much for your attending this evening. At this point, committee, I'm going to put on the screen, if you could, Ms. Anderson, a suggested motion that is all encompassing to cover off all of the reports we've seen so far this evening. Is there a committee member willing to make this motion on your screen? Mr. Stewart, thank you very much. Is there discussion on the motion, please, from the committee members? Seeing none, I will ask the question on the motion, please. Call for the question, pardon me. And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, committee members. Our next order of business is 3B. We've been sitting for exactly an hour now since our last break. I think we can probably plow through this next section, I think, fairly quickly. So I'm going to ask committee members just to continue through with no break. Thank you very much. Mr. Dollar, thank you for your patience. We are now going on to C47 Utility Fiscal Policy. Mr. Dollar, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'll keep my remarks pretty short, hopefully. So before committee tonight is a draft policy related to the utility fiscal policy. Administration has created this policy with the intention of providing some transparency around utility rate setting. At the same time, the policy attempts to establish some guidelines and principles for the funding model used for the utility services that provides the most fair and economical cost to customers. With this policy, administration intends to ensure that utility services will be financially stable over the long term. Services will remain a self-funded enterprise, and a consistent year-over-year approach to utility rates will be employed. Within the draft policy itself, there are several sections that deal with specific guiding principles These principles cover things like operating costs, rate setting itself, debt financing, and then financial planning. The principles themselves cover the existing practices and philosophies that administration is currently utilizing to manage the setting of the utility rates. Once again, the draft policy is intended to enhance the transparency around rate setting, as well as the fiscal model itself. The policy is presented tonight for discussion, and if committee approves, the policy would be presented to council at the May 25th meeting for council approval. That concludes my comments, and be happy to answer any questions that committee members may have.
Thank you, Mr. Dollar, for your presentation. I'll open up the floor now for questions from the committee members, starting with Committee Member Barnhart.
Thank you, Chair Daniluk, and thank you, Mr. Dollar. Mr. Dollar, I just want to understand correctly. Did we have a policy before, or is this its first, the first iteration of a policy for this?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Barnhart. This is actually the first policy. There was no prior policy that dealt with any kind of utility fiscal policy.
And so that would have been, I won't say ad hoc, but it would have been part of the budget process for council, and they would have dealt with it kind of on a principal basis, perhaps, because I've always recalled us saying that it's about not pay as you go. There's another term. I'm sure Councillor Hendricks will remember what it is. But in other words, we didn't want the utilities to be coming out of the taxes. We wanted the utilities to pay for themselves, in other words. So is that still the principle here in play?
Certainly, that is still the principle in play. That goes to the comments around utilities being a self-funded enterprise.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, previous to any kind of policy being in place, it would have been dealt with through conversations with council, through a budget process, making sure that that was what was in fact being presented through a budget practice that would have been employed by administration at the time. The policy itself, of course, just sets all of that in writing and provides a guideline for future councils, future administrations to follow, and make sure it's very clear that everybody is following those same guiding principles and practices.
Thanks for that answer, Mr. Dowell.
Next up, we have Mr. Hendricks. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you. And just to piggyback on Councilor Barnhart's comments, this discussion came to just about every budget process that I've ever been at, and you're right, it was never formalized, but every budget had a conversation about let's call it the utility package and what all gets encompassed. And every year it's different. Some year there's some capital discussions that were also in here, and some interesting ways of perhaps handling some of the capital issues. And so it just was a discussion, and it's it's nice to have it formalized. It'll still be a discussion at every budget, but it's good to have it formalized. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stout, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just quickly looking through this, Mr. Dowler, I wondered, there's a bullet point under section 5 of the policy. It's on page, well, on my agenda, it's on page 53, but I think it's been moved up now because I'm using an older version. Anyway, 5, utility rate setting principles. There's 3 or 4 bullet points, and then one says, customer rates will promote the efficient use of resources and could be set to achieve broader social and environmental goals. Now, I understand that's a could be, so you don't have to do it. It's just permissive language that says you can if you want to. Would you be able to give me an example of what those social goals and environmental goals might be?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Stout. And some of those goals could be, using a simplest example that comes to mind would be waste. So if there was a environmental goal around reducing waste, you may actually want to increase your waste fees beyond what would have been dictated through the financial model. So if you assume the financial model would say $25 per week or per month for waste services, we actually want to reduce people's usage and promote more recycling or reuse. Maybe we'll increase that to $30 per month instead. So that would be one very simple example where when it comes to a rate setting practice, all of a sudden you are trying to drive different behaviors with a rate than what would be dictated through just typical financial analysis or analytics.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that exposition. That's great. And yeah, just emphasizing that this policy language doesn't mean that we have to do that, but it enables us to do it, or this council or a subsequent council to do it if that's the course they decide to take. Thank you. Appreciate the exposition.
Mr. Hendricks, you have a follow-up?
Thank you. Yeah, and to that very point, you have things like reservoirs that need to be upgraded. You know, you may decide that, population base will be such that you need to have a certain volume of water, to maintain the NFP 13 rules for fire protection, all that sort of stuff. And you may say, hey, that maybe that gets tagged on to a rate, and people would understand why you're doing that. Same with sewage. When we went through the storm water management review, there was a lot of discussion about how to handle, some of the capital projects and all the rest that came out of that discussion. And so, again, rates can be used for that, and people can identify with that sort of thing. So, it basically circles back to what the situation is at the time in the community, and what you're staring at in terms of how you're going to proceed with the funding. So rates are one way of dealing with that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Any further questions for Mr. Dollar on this report? Seeing none, I've taken the liberty of drafting a motion for consideration by the committee. Ms. Anderson, on the chat, if you could, please. Is there a member of the committee willing to move the motion in front of you? Mr. Stout?
So moved, Mr. Chair. Do you want me to read it?
Actually, yes, please. Actually,
Okay, I move that the Committee of the Whole refer Council Policy C47, Utility Fiscal Policy, to Council for approval.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Discussion on the motion, please. Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. That carries unanimously. Thank you, committee members. Thank you, Mr. Dollar. Our next item of business on our agenda is closed session. There's no closed session this evening. Councillor inquiries. Are any councillors wish to make an inquiry this evening? Seeing none. Information items from council. Any information items need to be brought to committee of the whole from any committee members. Again, seeing none. Awesome. Number 7, emerging issues. Any emerging issues from council members, committee members this evening? Okay. Seeing none, our last order of business is adjournment. So I will make the announcement that our committee member is over at 7:42 this evening. Thank you, committee members. Thank you to the public and our presenters, and have a good evening. Thank you very much.